And so we got Gladys, tattoo artist from San Antonio. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. I'm very glad you were able to come down and talk to the podcast.
I took a look at some of your other recordings and I was like, what am I going to say? What am I going to bring to this? So,
I mean, if anything, I was just kind of worried because I was like, she's going to look at her page, nothing but music, and she's going to be like, should I start playing the guitar or something?
no, you know what? I was worried about that because whenever I talk to someone about music, they're like, are you an alien? Because I have this horrible memory. So I never realized like who is singing or the name of the song or the band. So I try to avoid those conversations.
Gotcha. So what do you listen to? Being that do you listen to particular music? I mean, if anything, I feel like maybe I saw your Instagram page, like maybe you're into like the 50s, maybe like oldies.
Yes, I think I do lean more towards like the oldies, like lowrider oldies.
Oh, cool.
But I'm a 90s baby, so or late 80s baby. But I listen to a lot of 90s music, and I'm all over the page, really. So if it sounds good, I will listen to it.
Gotcha. 90s country, 90s rap, and a little bit of everything.
So I was born and raised in California, and so I listened to a lot of like No Doubt. It was like my top.
Really?
I still like they're my top Pandora list.
Really? Nice.
Then like 311 or Bjork was a big one that I used to listen
Wow.
to. So it's so different.
You're blowing my mind right now. I haven't heard anybody talk about Bjork in like forever.
I know. So every now and then, like somebody will post something about her, and I'm like, okay, like there's that instant connection. But yeah, so it's rare to hear someone talk about like her music. So, but as far as like how different everything is, that's where I'm like, oh well, I listen to everything.
Nice. So
you know what? I just found out that there's a country rap, and that blew my mind because I was like, country rap? I didn't know that was a thing. So again, like I just try to avoid music because I'm like, oh okay, cool.
That's so cool that you just hit like No Doubt and then like Bjork, and then okay, so I will tell the listeners that you are a burlesque performer.
Yes.
So you just hit Bjork and then No Doubt, Gwen Stefani. Who are your influences? I mean, you just hit two big factors with those two leading ladies, and I imagine you have an influence. Do you have particular influence in?
That's a good question. So I think with the No Doubt, there was that image of like Gwen Stefani that she was like kind of like the pinup girl, but a little bit of rock, a little bit of reggae, a little the ska reggae look. So I always liked that, but I never felt like, oh, I'm just one genre, or I just like dressing in a particular way all the time. So I think that's where I kind of felt like I was in between everything, and that's why, you look at my page, and before I had a baby, I mean, I was just all over the place. I had tattoo, I was doing the burlesque performing, and the little artistry that I had, the creativity, just I'm trying to do it all, but so I take bits and pieces from everything, and I like that. Okay, cool. I want to, I'll look like that today, or I'll throw red lipstick on that day, and it just depends. Like I just don't have one category.
Yeah, I mean, so through a mutual friend, either she got tattooed by you or she follows you. But I was like, I saw your page, and I was like, for some reason, there's like all the people we have, something sticks out. So that's why we had picked to have you on, because we're like, she's in San Antonio, and if anything, we wanted to start with the tattoo world, and if anything, I wanted to get a lady tattoo artist on, because I was like I don't want it to feel like a boys club.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, I don't think I really got that vibe from your podcast. So you know, when you first reached out, I was like, okay, let me double check, like, let me look into this, you know, because you're always wondering, like, what's a scam, what's not.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But I didn't get that vibe that it was a boys' club, so I was like, okay. But that's why I told you, like, you know, I've been out of the scene for a while. I don't consider myself like a high-profile female tattoo artist, but you know, that having a baby and, you know, I'm barely kind of dipping my toes back in the water and, you know, trying to figure out who I am again. You know, I went through so many different transitions of like my style or, you know, what I like, what I wanted to do, what my goals were, and I'm kind of finding myself again. So this was like a perfect opportunity for me to kind of break out of that mommy shell and, you know, just talk about it.
Absolutely. And is there anything particular you want to explore now in this next phase that you speak of? Like, is there particular style of art of tattoo, or do you want to? I don't mean, did you want to? Do you want to get into anything you didn't before, or in particular?
Yeah. So I think that today's world is all about like, you know, social media, and I think for a small part in the beginning of my journey with like tattooing and doing the burlesque performing, like I feel like I put myself out there, but I didn't fully put myself out there. So like my inner turmoil, my you know, because I feel like my goal with burlesque performing was not only because I was interested in something that I always wanted to do, but it was like a challenge, you know, to kind of put myself out there and like, you know, I deal with body issues. I've, you know, had to overcome a lot of that. So there's a lot of like body positivity, you know, and so I guess that's kind of part of my journey now, right, is to rediscover myself after having my son. And you know, I was like, okay, I'm going to start a TikTok. You know, I'm going to start a TikTok and I'm going to start recording like what that journey looks like. Because I think I was fascinated about pregnancy for years. You know, I always wanted a baby. I thought, oh yeah, I got it. Like I know friends that have had children and how they bounce back after giving birth and getting right back into what they were doing, or they found something else. And so my individual journey, you know, I was like, okay, well, I think it would be entertaining, but also, you know, maybe it'll inspire someone, because at some point, like, I was looking for that inspiration too. So that's actually, yeah, that's the next phase, is, you know, just seeing where that goes. And, you know, I already have like a few like modeling gigs set up, and we'll see how it goes, you know, because I'm like, it's so different. It's different because now I got to think about my image with consideration of my son.
Gotcha.
So, but it's all within lines, within the same lines of what I did before. You know, like it's who I am. It's part of, you know, my image of what I created, and I want to stay true to that and kind of get back into it. You know.
Absolutely. And so it does change you, motherhood. You would say.
Oh yes. It does.
What in particular? Like, what is it? Your mindset just turns to different, or I mean, is it a bit of paranoia? I mean, I can only imagine what my mom went through.
Oh God, I know. I mean, you know, and they say that, right? Like, until you have kids of your own, that you start to, or like once you get older, you start to realize like the struggles that your parents went through and sacrifices they made. Like, yeah, so I think that the biggest thing that I learned was that you naturally like have to give up that selfishness, you know, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle because I was doing it on my own and I didn't plan for that, you know, and so that was more of a shock, and having to adjust to that. So it was a lot more than what I thought, but it was good to go through that and know, like, okay, well, that's going to continue to happen, like, no matter what. Like, each phase as he gets older, I mean, he's only 14 months now, right? Mm-hmm. it's all different. It's all different, and it doesn't matter about the forums, about the podcasts, about
The books.
the books. Like every baby's different, so sometimes you just gotta like wing it and like, okay, I guess we're doing this now.
Man, I can only imagine. It's just like, and then like, so you had your boy later in life. Was yeah? No, I don't want to. I'm not gonna. What's that word? I'm not gonna try to get your age and number or anything.
No, you're fine.
It's just like the only thing is that like I'm in my 30s, and do you feel like in today's day and age, it's like, do you feel it's put off to have kids, or is it just like we have so much going on that it's like we'll put fatherhood, motherhood on the back burner, and then do you feel that way? Or?
Okay, I see what you're saying. So I think for me, it just didn't happen. Like I wanted it. I think at times I thought I was ready. Now that I have it, I'm like, oh, okay. I think it is better that it happened later on in life, in my 30s, early 30s. I'll add that.
Gotcha, cool.
But I see both sides of it. I see other friends that had their children very early on, and they're at the age now where the parents can do whatever they're doing and not have to worry so much about their kid. They already went through that struggle, or they had help from their family and got that extra hands-on assistance, at that early stage. And that's when you need it the most, So, yeah, it's tough. So even now I'm like, okay, I think it happened at the right time. Because I'm telling you, I was just go, like, I was partying on top of, trying to work and trying to, build my brand, so to speak. And, it's sometimes I got lost in it, so I think it's good that I experience all that because I don't miss it. I don't spend Friday evening, wishing that I could be out. I'm fine with my son. So it's just different. It's different. And I'm like, oh, I could do whatever I want at 8 in the morning. And so it's a different mindset.
And so it's just, so you feel like now with like all the activities of like also like looking into schools and stuff, do you look forward to all that, and I mean, because we come from, I mean, if anything, my parents, if I don't think I've ever heard, I heard like when I was a kid, like what schools we were gonna go to. It's just like whatever's close and whatever's in the borough or the
right.
Yeah. Now it's like, you got different schools like that specialize in different like activities or things that you want your kid to.
Yeah. I had a friend that, she paid so much money to like get him into this this one school that was like it's this, I don't know, idea or teaching. It's called like Montessori, and it's like, you kind of let them do grown-up things on a baby scale. Like they have their own kitchen set up, and they learn how to cut, and it's crazy, right? It looks cool. But yeah, I wouldn't do that. Like, and I think I have enough time to like figure out exactly where I want to balance out in the middle of being like overprotective and like, okay, public school is fine. I made it. You'll be fine. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, but that's a good question. Yeah, who knows? Things could change.
Yeah, in public schools, it's like now nobody really talks about public schools. It's all just like private schools, and I'm just like, dude, like we didn't have the budget back then to even like consider.
Oh yeah,
no. And public schools weren't that bad. I mean, unless you really like, I mean, even at that, I mean, some like not so good places around town, or like schools and not so good places, people always come out all right. I mean, I don't know, but just I get that paranoia against with CNN and Fox News where everybody's like, I need to get my kid to like somewhere safe. But I mean,
and that's so hard too, because you see that same risk in private schools, in boarding schools, like, so I don't want to say like whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but I'm going to try to control what I can control and do damage control when I need to do damage control. So
yeah,
I mean, if not, then you just go crazy.
absolutely, yeah. You start, I guess, calling everybody you can call.
I know. I mean, I'm like, oh God, school. Oh God, that's like a whole other topic. I'm like, he's barely trying to walk, and I'm afraid that he's gonna fall. So yeah, I just gotta take it one day at a time, really.
So, are you the being at this early stage in that you had a boy, a baby? Like my parents, they were always like paranoid about like why isn't he talking, or what's, are you that type where you're like, why isn't he walking a certain way, or why isn't he getting up, or are you just like, no, just let him be?
So I think I've gone through all of the different levels. Like, I'm telling you, like every stage, it's been so different. And I was in the beginning like getting wrapped up in like the forums and like, oh, you're following this teacher, or there's like this one on YouTube that's pretty popular, and so we'll watch these videos, and because I'm like, if it's going to be TV, it's going to be something kind of educational, something that he'll pick up, right? And so there was one where it was clapping, and it was like, oh, around 9 months they start clapping. And I was like, 9 months, come on, like he's not clapping. And, I think by like month 11, I was like, oh God, like I'm going to give up on trying to make him clap. Like, who cares, right?
Yeah.
It'll eventually come. And I don't know at what point he started clapping, but when he finally did it, I was like, oh my God.
He did it.
Yeah, like, and on his own, and it's like him watching that show, like, oh, okay, like it's time to clap. So, there's been instances like that where I'm like, oh my God, he's doing that now. And the pediatricians, like, they hone in on certain things, so they always ask like about those different milestones. And so far, like, it's been good, but there's some things like the stupid clapping that I was like, oh my goodness, can you just clap? Just give me one.
Right.
So, yeah, it's crazy. It's so crazy.
Gotcha. I mean, I didn't mean to get you worked up. You're just like, why wasn't he clapping?
For real.
Oh, so segue back to the art of burlesque. So do you feel San Antonio is a good place, or has it been good to that art, or do you feel there should be more, like more of an? I mean, I think there's an audience here. But being that I've been to like Las Vegas, and like I haven't been to Cali, but Las Vegas, I saw a few, and they were like, they were it.
Yeah.
And then I've never been to one here, but I've seen like the footage of yours. Do you feel San Antonio has embraced that art form, or what do you feel? You be honest, totally honest.
That's a good question. I think that I've always considered San Antonio to be a little bit calmer with a lot of things, right? And I think it's because I came from California that everything was like go, 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 and here it was like, okay, it's not that fast paced. So with things like burlesque, when I finally went to my first like burlesque show out here, I was like, oh my God, they actually have something like that. And then that's when I started opening my eyes, like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. I want to be up there. And the more that I would go to shows and kind of meet people, and I was like, okay, you see different parts of it that you're like, it's not well received, or people have their views on it, or it's only like catering to certain nightlife, and I there is that difference of like Vegas compared to some of the troops that are here. But I've had a few mentors that I've been really good friends with, and that have a greater vision for burlesque in San Antonio, and it's just really hard to build up from that by yourself. And sometimes when there's a group, there's too many ideas. There's too many ways to kind of go about things. So I think that there is room for improvement, right? But the climate of today's world is getting a little bit more difficult with people's views on things. So even with like the drag scene, they're getting hit with so much right now, and like hate, death threats, like, you know, so it's that part's kind of scary, you know. And so as much as I always thought like, oh, there's the body positivity and like the body empowerment, whether it's male or female, you know, there's a lot of room to grow from that, but I don't know what the future is with it, you know, and that's why I think like everything happened at the right time with me having my son. And, you know, like I said, like I'm tapping back into that, but not full like burlesque. Like I don't know if I would perform again, but I've seen so many different changes that I'm like, okay, you know, one of my mentors, like they will pick up different events and they just travel to that and they'll have fun, and then, you know, kind of go from there. But I think that a lot of burlesque performers, you know, end up with dreams higher than what like their levels are, you know. And I think I was that performer where I was like, man, I want to get there, but, you know, I was so focused on everything else. So even now I'm like, there's no way I could do that again because I have so much focus on my son. So that's why I'm like, oh, I have an opinion about it, but I can't really have a full opinion because I know now what it takes to actually make it in that industry, and it takes a lot.
Absolutely. So what's the process? Okay, so as you started, was it hard to like get it off the ground? What's the process in getting getting a show together and up and going? Is I mean, I don't want to say if it's easy, but is it? I imagine it's a lot going on at once.
Yeah, there's different ways that I've seen people get into that, basically by like just throwing themselves into it. Like there's been, you know, kind of like amateur options, I guess, but, you know, it's always best to get like a mentor, somebody that's already doing it, and then you kind of see like that behind the scenes, you know, process. And I mean, the main thing is you really have to have a good routine, and you know, to really know what you're doing when you go up there, you know. So I think like I threw myself into it because my first performance was it was for the anniversary party of the tattoo shop that I was at.
Oh, nice.
And so the owner's a really good friend of mine, and she was like, hey, this is your chance. Like, this will give you motivation to like do it, and you'll be there in front of like all of us and, you know, people that like care about you and want to cheer you on, type of thing. And that way you can get a feel for it and see if you even want to do it. And so that was like the perfect intro. And I was able to do that, and I was like, okay, like I liked it, you know, and I learned from that. But I will tell you, there was actually one time that I was on stage for a contest, and that's technically my first burlesque performance, because I didn't know they wanted us to go on stage, and that they're like, what song? I'm like, what do you mean what song? I thought this was like a costume contest and I just have to show the costume. And they were like, well, we're going to put a song and we're going to put you on stage, and you just, you know, show off your costume, do something crazy, scary, whatever. And because it was like a Krampus costume.
Oh, cool.
And of course, typical girl, I was a sexy Krampus. And I threw that costume together last minute. I just decided to have fun with it. And when I got up there, you know, I had made this whip from like Dollar Tree, you know, cat toys and headbands. And so I whipped my leg and it really hurt. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Are you going to pass out?
And I had like a little cape and I was like, oh, okay. And, you know, and people were cheering me on, and my brother was in the audience, and he was all, oh, and like turned around, you know, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, what am I? I did like a little shimmy, my boobs almost fell out, and I was like, okay, I need to go, and I ran off the stage, and but that was like the first part, you know, where I was like, okay, like I thought I would be more afraid to go on stage and do something like that, but that helped. And then my performance with or for the tattoo shop, so it was a perfect introduction. From that, I was able to show the people that I wanted to mentor me that like I had the drive and like the vision for it, and then they took me under their wings and just helped me from there. And I really feel like I should have done more with it, but you know, I did enough to say like, hey, I did it, and I loved it, and it was fun. And
to check off the, absolutely.
Yeah. So it was a crazy time.
And that's so cool, because like the way that you said that, you know, that the way you got the costume together and stuff, and I mean, at least you're honest about it too, because other people are like, yeah, I had it made, or I had, you know, and just kind of like playing it off. But I mean, there's a DIY to everything, and that's if anything. Being that you said that, even makes me even like think, oh man, she's like really, and it make, you know, for respect, I'm like, much respect, you know. Absolutely, because I mean anybody would have been like, yeah, you know, I had somebody throw some stuff together, and then at the end they brought it over, and but you were like, yeah, no, I went down to like the store and I'm trying to figure out what to do, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it's more like well, I guess I was a self-proclaimed DIY queen for a while. But, you know, it was also like, it is the thrill of it. Like, oh, okay, I want to make it. You know, I want to feel proud of it, you know, and have it unique. Anybody can go to the sex store and buy a whip. You know?
Absolutely, but,
yeah. The idea of that, too, I was like, no, like, you know, I might just use this for one time, one show. So we'll see how it works. You know, if it falls apart, okay, right. You know, but it served its purpose. So yeah, it was fun. So there was a lot of progression with that too. You know, and it's always good to have mentors, right? Because then you learn from them. You learn like, you know, how to put a costume together to make it easier to take off. You know, and then to design it, or you know, decorate it, you know, and all of that is just, it takes like a lot of like thought process. And I mean, oh my God, for my first bra, I think I even had donations from the other tattoo artists in the shop to buy those jewels, because I had jeweled it all up and it took a lot of coverage, and I was like, oh my God, this bra is more expensive than this whole outfit put together. So I learned from that too, where I was like, I didn't need to do so many, you know, but yeah, you just learn as you go, and just, you know, I think that's with anything, right? Like, you know, you're gonna fail, you know, you're gonna fall.
Absolutely. You just gotta pat yourself down and get up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so your first performance, I imagine you were very nervous. So is there anything that you said to yourself, anything that you did, or or did you just like, once you got on stage, you forget about everybody? And how does that work? Because I mean, if anything, I don't think I've ever been in front of more than 10 people. And that's even like without a few drinks, but I can only imagine. So how was that first performance?
It did take some alcohol.
Okay, cool.
So that was fun. And you know what? One of the other artists was in the military, and he came back in time for that anniversary party. So at the last minute, he was like, "Hey, what if I come onto the stage and like, surprise everyone?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's perfect. That'll be cool." And so we kind of worked it into my routine. So it kind of helped that I had someone on there that was like kind of feeding into this role that I was trying to emulate, like the Jessica Rabbit role, right? That was like the first one that I did.
Gotcha.
And so it was cool, and I was like able to be funny about it and like laugh when it was funny. And when I'm nervous, I laugh. So it was cool. I had that. But every time after that, I mean, it doesn't matter what I did. Like, I was super nervous. Sometimes I felt like the alcohol did not kick in, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm still nervous. So yeah, you kind of get into like a routine of like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do my makeup, and touch it up, and get a fan and kind of cool off. And but for me, I just like, I have to constantly go through it over and over in my mind, like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and don't forget to take off my glove here at that note. And I'm like, I'm not a good dancer, so I had a mentor that like, he was amazing at being my choreographer, and like, he helped me remember like, oh, okay, this is what you're gonna do here, remember it like this. And so it helped. I think without that, I would have still been on the stage trying to lip sync, basically trying to do things that weren't coming back to the art of burlesque. And as much as I thought, I was doing something right, you're always learning. So sometimes too much is just too much.
Absolutely. No, I mean, if anything, I mean, it's either two. It's like either, how does that saying? Or go home, go big, or go home. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, if anything, that's perfect for what you do. I mean, just like look at Kiss. Kiss was like, they used to put the boxes with the speakers, so it looks like they had a bunch of speakers, but only had like 2 speakers with a bunch of boxes. I mean, yeah, I can only imagine, like, for sure that the like the ambience or the environment that you try to make your performance in, you have to like think big too, to make a impact. And for people like to, for some reason, it's like people, they like to see big things, and I guess that's just our minds. We like to see.
Are you talking about my boots?
Oh, oh my god! Right? I'm like, should I start the Craig Ferguson talk? But it's just like, I can only imagine, like, I don't know, just is it pressure, like?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure because. So okay, if you think about like San Antonio and how small the scene is for everything, you're always thinking, okay, well, has somebody already done this?
Mm-hmm.
And because you don't want to be called out for copying something. Mm. But also it's like, well, I like this part of what they did. How can I do that and make it better, or make it look better, or make it my own? So it's pressure, and that goes all the way from the song choice to the clothing to I've heard people talk about each other just because they have the same skirt, and it's like, that's only one piece of 10 or 15 things that they're taking off, so I'm like, that skirt really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's things like that, that it's like, okay, that, not that that's the main pressure, but it is one of them, and man, I think that the main pressure is trying to take something off that won't come off the way that you planned it, or the way that you practiced it. So yeah, you got to figure it out. I think one girl was trying to take off her corset, and they tied it where they couldn't undo the knot, and I think that they had to like cut it off or something. And then she went on with the show, and it's like, well, yeah, like what else would you do? You know?
Absolutely. I just love like the conviction of your face when you're explaining. Like you're like, dude, like it's just no ballpark. It's interesting because you're like, yeah, dude, like I bet you're like, it's not just all like what Hollywood makes you think like, oh, I just come out and then like the music just comes through, and no, there's like a process.
Yes, yes. And sometimes, I think the first couple of times, you think about things that you've seen, right? And that you could say like, oh, they forgot to take off their glove, and so it looks silly at the very end. And it's like, wait, did they mean for that? Like, nobody else is really breaking it down other than you trying to, like, process how would you do it, right? So I think one or two of my performances, like, I did something out of sequence like that, and probably a glove or whatever. And, I was like, because then it messes up your mind, like, or at least mine, where I'm like, I forgot to do that. Now, what comes after that? And and so it's a lot more than just taking off your clothes.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, to be like a true performer and with an audience that you're like, okay, your job is to give a show, right? And like be entertaining and look good while doing it and feel good, right? And
absolutely.
So it's really hard because then, I think, I always try to have fun and like kind of engage with the audience. And, they say, oh, well, if you get nervous, like, look past. And, like, no, it just doesn't work like that. And then you have someone, like, that you know or that you see, and you're like, oh, my God, okay, like, what, how do they see me? And so it's different.
So how do you counterattack that? I mean, like, you had mentioned earlier about your brother.
Oh, my God.
How do you, I mean, for me, I probably would have already been like, I'm out of here. But imagine you have a certain mindset. You're like, maybe like it is what it is. I'm just gonna, don't worry about it. Or
well, the good thing is like you still have pasties on. Like it's just skin, right? But for my brother, yeah, he was like, oh God, like that wasn't even a burlesque performance. Like I didn't take off like the dress or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was enough that he was like, oh my God, like turned around,
Yeah.
And so at that same bar, this was Zombies Bar, right? So that first experience that I had was for the Krampus show that they put on every year. And it was a costume contest. And, okay, so then we had a show there, and it was like for Valentine's, and it was, anyways, I think it was Valentine's. Or there was another one. Not really sure now. But I did like a Dia de los Muertos type of show, and my sister was there as a vendor. And my sister and my cousin was there as a vendor selling cupcakes, right? And, their husbands were in the car because they didn't want to come in.
Yeah.
They didn't know at what point I was going to do my show. And
so they stayed in the car so that they didn't want...
yeah, the husband.
Oh,
did, right?
that is so cool. I mean,
yeah, like
family.
Yeah, like okay, they stayed in the car.
That's awesome. I mean, just like that respect or that, like those boundaries are.
Yeah, like if they feel uncomfortable, that's fine.
Yeah.
And even for my sister, she's very conservative, mom of 4.
Yeah.
She's been married to her husband for 20 years. So. And my cousin too, like she works for a school district, very conservative. And, so it was kind of funny. Like I remember getting to like the final reveal and like hearing them like cheer me on. And like, I kind of glanced over and I was like, okay, like, and I just remember that being like my favorite performance. Like I felt it. I loved it. And at that point, I was like, see, it doesn't matter who's in the audience, right? Like, it's a show. It's not full-on show. You know what I'm getting?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it was empowering, and again, like,
absolutely
for a lot of women that are like my size, or they've given me enough feedback that I feel like that's who I'm doing it for, really. I'm doing it for myself, but I was doing it for them too, to show them like, hey, you could be confident in your skin, and it might be faking it might just be, in that moment, but in that moment, on that performance particularly, I was like, oh my god, like, yes, like, it didn't matter exactly what I was self-conscious about, or what went wrong or anything like that. It was just like, wow, that was a good show.
Absolutely.
And I was like, okay, well, I could take a shot to that.
Absolutely. And it's just like, it's so cool that you said, you're like, I was more worried about me getting it right than the people outside, and that's basically what it boils down to, is like, in yourself, you're like, I want to get this right, and who cares if, what about the audience and this, that, and the other. Yeah. And I mean, if anything, I think people forget about like any type of performers.
Right.
It's like, dude, like, just if you just get it together on your own, don't worry about the outside. Just you get your routine right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and it sucks to say, but sex sells. It really does. And so I think that some people would look down on that, like, oh, well, you're just showing your body, and oh, you're just doing this. Like, well, a lot of entertainers are doing that too, like a lot of music, artists, and so it's different, yes, but I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, that was the goal, and it didn't matter that I wasn't making a lot of money from it. Like, I think I know I was putting way more money into my costumes and the whole effort that ever came back my way. And at that time, I was like, oh, that was my goal. COVID did push everything back, and after the quarantine and things were slowly opening up, a lot of my burlesque friends were going back into the scene and just, adding a mask, and, I was like, but
yeah,
like, that kind of sucks too, because then you can't take it off, or you have to include that into your routine. Like, it's uncomfortable. And I don't know, I was like, okay, I gained weight, so I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna work on myself, and I'm gonna jump right back into it. And then I got pregnant, so it's life's funny. Life is definitely funny, but like I said, I feel like I've accomplished my goal with it, but I have love for it. I don't know if I'll ever tap into it again.
Oh, so you haven't been doing it for as of now?
Mm-mm.
Oh, come on, get back on it, get back on the horse.
And so when I got pregnant, I ended up having like this crazy surgery for like appendicitis, right?
Gotcha.
And literally like almost died.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, it was crazy, so crazy. But they basically cut me like straight down my stomach. So I posted a photo of my like maternity photos, and was just like, okay, well, doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to be proud of it. Like, I'm here, I'm alive. My son is healthy. I almost lost him from that surgery, or at least that's what they said. I don't know who knows. But afterwards, so it's been a little over a year, and I'm like trying to make peace with that. Like, I knew my body was going to be different after a baby, but I didn't also expect that scar, So it's like, there's that other side of it. Like, again, like that body positivity, that like being safe and happy in your own skin. And it's like, well, I'm not really happy, but I'm not really like pushing it. And, so I'm still trying to figure out, like, if I were to jump back into anything like that, like, what's my message, right? Like, what do I stand by? And because I'm like, if I had the money and I had the chance to, I would go get like a mommy makeover right now, Yeah. And so it's like, but that's okay too, So, and that's why I said, like, there's that like love-hate with like social media. Like, it's so important, or it's the main way we communicate now. And I want to tap into that, but I'm kind of scared, like there's so much that's going to come with that, like good, the bad, the rude comments, I'm like, ugh.
So, I mean, there is still stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking like, I mean, if anything, like I haven't heard anything negative about like what we do, and then it's like at the same time, I mean, but I guess the people I surround myself with, I don't want to say we're open minded, but it's just, and then I can only imagine like what you do and stuff. The tattoo, it's like, it's like a open space. Everybody's like, cool about everything. But I mean, to hear that you're like, oh, I get backlash too. I'm like, dude.
Yeah, I think it's been a while. I'm like, I don't want to jinx myself, but you know, I think I've always shared that part of me, like the self consciousness and like, oh God, because I used to get told a lot, like, oh wow, you're pretty for a big girl, and it's like, well, fuck, why can't I just be pretty? Like,
Yeah.
and I think when I moved to Texas, I remember a lot of people saying like, oh well, that's good because they have like big girls there and like you'll fit in. I'm like, okay, and
Yeah.
granted, if California is very well, the parts that I was from and like that area, you think of like Hollywood, you think of like the perfect beach body.
Yeah.
And I don't really have to think about that too much, whether it's here or my age now. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, like I just want like to wear something that I feel comfortable in, But,
Yeah.
so there's been times that I've posted stuff on social media and I'll get like some weird comments or rude comments, and a couple times it traced back to this one girl, and so now whenever I see a rude comment, I always think it's her, like with a fake profile, so I'm like, oh
Yeah.
God, here we go, it's her again.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe that makes it easier on me, but I think that kind of prevented me from showing more or like posting more even about the burlesque journey, because I was like, oh, I don't like that photo, you could see my roll here, like,
Yeah.
oh, you could see my double chin there, or like a lot of times it's just angling your body, and I was really, really hard on myself, and yeah, moving on from that, I'm like, okay, there's room for improvement, I think with anything, with anyone, but that's kind of where I'm at now, where I'm like, okay, well, let's see where this new journey is going to take me.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned you have a few times you mentioned that you have a mentor. So is it like old school, where they're like old school burlesque? Is that where the school that they come from, your mentors?
Well, so there isn't like an actual school, but
old, like that old form,
right?
Cool.
And there are different styles, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's different styles of burlesque, and I think they're more like in that alternative space of burlesque. So it's not exactly like classic burlesque, like if you think of like Dita Von Teese and
Exactly.
the Vegas style, like that would be a little bit more like the classic.
Or the traditional. Or
Right. But the group that I was hanging out with a lot, like they were doing more of the alternative side. So there's also like the other side of that is more of like just BDSM, like
Gotcha.
there's a few groups like that, and it's like that's cool that there's a group for that niche too. So and I did a few shows with them too, and I was like, that's what I'm telling you, like I probably who knows what I would have done if COVID didn't happen. Like I was all about it. I was like, I'm gonna go full time, I'll tattoo on the weekends when, I used to do that because I worked at a bank, so it's like,
cool.
Okay, I just felt like I'm constantly looking for like, okay, what am I into now? Like, what do I want to do that makes me happy now? And at that time, like burlesque, I was leaning towards it, and so I don't know. We'll see now.
I mean, I feel it's a beautiful art form. I mean, if anything, like I like all that style. I mean, the boardwalk empire type of thing, and it's just like, and I've seen also like you mentioned the modern one or the alternative one. I mean, if anything, that's like a beautiful art form that it's gone through time. I mean, if anything, you should keep it alive, and if anything, you should keep striving for that. But I mean, it's just like the only thing is that gets me is like I know San Antonio. It's just like it's because I went to New York a few years ago, and you could totally cut it in half, like like the difference between like the scenes and even the coffee shops. You know what I mean? It's like, and then you being from California, another contender on the table. I mean, yeah. So the scenes, like, oh, so my question is like, so what was your the reason for coming down from California?
Well, this was back in 2009.
Okay.
And I left like a really difficult relationship, and like my situation just a lot of things were just not going the way that I wanted, right? I actually flew off a freeway, like,
Oh,
totaled like my first brand new car.
oh man. So you're a daredevil on the. You have a part-time daredevil.
Oh my gosh.
That's cool. So you are in the little danger. But go on.
not the good kind, I guess. So just a lot of things had happened within that year, and I was like, you know what, my sister and her husband lived out here with their kids, and along with my cousin and their family, and so I was like, okay, maybe I should just go, and I came out to help my sister, and it went from 2 weeks to 2 months, basically, where I was like, wow, San Antonio is it. Like, I can live on my own out here and, just kind of build something. And so I started working for Chase, and I was in the call center. I did so many different positions there, and I was like, oh, I'm not happy, but my bills were paid. I had a roof over my head, I was slowly getting into like the burlesque scene, like trying to figure out like what my style was, and I was leaning towards like seeing that scene out here of like the rockabilly and pinup, and there wasn't that much of it, but even that scene, I was like, okay, it is like anywhere, like what I grew up in California, like very cliquish, and so it's like it took some time to kind of figure out like who's who, and who's friendly, who's not, or who's my friend, who's not, and who dated who, and so all of that, I look back and I'm like, okay, yeah, I definitely made some mistakes. I spent my time on people or doing things that was just a waste, but all of that, like I said, is what got me here, where I'm like, no, I'm not missing out on much, but that's what brought me to Texas from California. And every time I think about moving back, and I'm like, oh my god, it's so expensive, and there's just no way.
Absolutely.
I mean, Texas now, it's getting expensive as well, so it's just crazy.
And it's just like yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine, like, I mean, if anything, I get homesick. Like, we went to Austin on the weekend, and I got homesick. I was like, and then nobody in the car wanted to say it, but they all said it at the end. But it's just like, I can only imagine you come from California to Texas. It's just like, I imagine there's a big difference. Did you experience any of that?
Yeah, so when you say homesick, are you saying like, in the sense like, you're somewhere and you want to get something to eat, but you don't know where to go, so you're like, oh, I just wish I was home.
Yeah, that and like, oh man, like that street we drive by, like I want to go back and see it.
Oh,
something like that.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I get homesick, but it's more of like, oh, because the familiarity of like where things are, right? Like even now, I've been here almost 12 years, and like I still get lost, and I'm like I depend on GPS, which I don't know, maybe it's just a personality default like trait for myself, but in California, I always felt like it was easier for me to navigate. Like, oh, I see where the mountains are. Like, I'm going north. You know, I see where the ocean is. You know, so here I don't have that. Like, I do feel like I'm just like in this circle and you know running around.
Yeah,
And,
like the Griswolds in European Vacation.
oh god, oh my god, yes. And so it's funny, and that's why I said like music. Like sometimes I just don't remember or movie references. Like I have a hard time with that too. I'm like, oh yeah, ha ha ha. But
Right.
this one I knew what you meant. For the record, I remember that.
Gotcha. Because I was like, you gave a look right now. You're like, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, yeah. It takes me a minute. I got it.
So I see that you put down your sleeves, and so what was your first tattoo?
So my first one was 3 little butterflies on my foot,
Cool.
and I actually had a tattoo artist come to my house because I had been in tattoo shops, and I was like, oh my god, like it's scary. And, you know,
Nice.
they made me like I just had a bad vibe,
Uh-huh.
I guess, from the ones that I went to in California, and so I was like 21, and I had heard about this girl that she did mobile tattooing, and I got her info, and I think it took a while too, and oh my god, I think my mom even left the house because she was so upset and disappointed.
Really? Oh
Yeah.
man, what was that? What was dinner like that night?
I don't remember, but I'm sure it was non-existent. So yeah, because we went through a long time of like the tattoos being a problem, the burlesque being a problem, the modeling. Oh my god! But I've been like the rebel of the family for a long time. So
Nice, very cool. I mean,
So, but yeah, that was my first tattoo. It was on
3
my foot.
butterflies. So what got you into tattooing? Was it a hard process to? God, you pick up things. I should be doing more things now. I feel
Why?
because like the burlesque, and then you had the tattooing, and then it just like maybe I should start like learning how to dance or something. I mean, I don't
Do
know.
it.
Yeah, I know because
Do
you make it seem so like it's just a
It's not easy. No, trust me. I try to give credit where it's due, right?
Uh-huh.
And I wouldn't have been in the tattoo industry if it wasn't for my best friend that is the owner of Nostalgic Inc.
Okay.
And that's where I apprenticed, and I was there for like almost 6 years. So it wasn't until she started like telling me like, hey, come back to the shop, like hang out. And you know, I would go hang out, and then I would start getting more tattoos, and you know, just started getting like, oh, like how do you do that? How do you do this? And I was getting more into art, you know, and I think I always enjoyed art, but I always felt like I was never good enough because I looked at the work that my older siblings did, right? And I'd be like, wow, like I can't do that, so I'm not an artist. But it took me a long time to realize, like, no, it takes time. Like, it doesn't matter where you start. Like, you know, you could learn how to do this, and I think that really helped me think about, you know, the rest of my life, like, or any other challenge. Like, yeah, sometimes like I'm not naturally gifted at anything. It takes me time, but I don't give up, you know, and I think that's that true test. Like, you know, and when I do give up, I give myself some time, you know, I try to figure out like, okay, well, do I want to keep doing this or learning this? So it took like a few months to really feel like, okay, I think I want to do that. And the encouragement and seeing like the different levels, right? Because I was like, oh my god, like I would never be able to do a portrait. Like, okay, well, you don't have to. Like, you wouldn't put that as like your niche, right? And so to this day, like I will never do a portrait, you know, but I could do other things that, you know, maybe a different style of a portrait, you know, but so it took a lot of time to like learn that and go through that process the right way. And you know, don't come for me. There's so many different ways on what is the right way to start tattooing, but I put my time in. I definitely put
Absolutely.
my time in, and
And you have real nice work. I mean, I checked out your page.
thank you.
It's very. I mean, you do go. What I like is that you have that kind of. You jump from thing to thing. Some people just like, I don't do this or I don't do that, and I mean, just like talking to you today, it's just like, you kind of have that. You kind of have that spirit of like, you gotta jump into it. You gotta find out what's on the other side.
Yeah, yeah. And and that's the thing. Like, I I wish that I could be one thing. I wish somebody could like hear my name and be like, oh yeah, she does this. Oh yeah, she does that. Great. That's you know, that's the only thing. But instead, yeah, like I've never been that person. I'll never be that person. And like let me throw you off too. Like in high school, I even was a part of this like police explore program because I was like, oh my god, I always wanted to be a police officer. Always. My whole majority of my family's military. I was like, I don't want to do that, but I think I want to be an officer, and I did that program. I went through like the boot camp, and I was almost in it, but I didn't love it. I felt like if I do this, that's a different type of like mask that I'm gonna wear, and I don't think I'm gonna like myself at the end of the day. Because I feel like it just it changed me in a way that I didn't want to pursue and be that. And so I think it takes like a very tough individual to still be like loving and like considerate, and and it could have just been the climate at that time of like that department, or the peers that I had that kind of influenced me at that time, and made me realize it. And then I was like, you know what, no, like maybe this is just not for me. And I'm so glad I made that choice, because sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm not really good at multitasking. Like they would be calling me on the radio and I'm like looking at finishing a report, and like I get into that mode of like being a perfectionist too sometimes. So I'd be like, oh no, I need to check my grammar, and like it wouldn't have been good. It wouldn't.
Damn. Oh, hold on. So what's your opinion on like the resurgence of like like the tattoo world, like all these shows? And are you a fan of these shows? Being that I can only imagine, like if I'm a cook and I see a show about a cook, I'm like, do I really want to see what I do for 8 hours? But what's it like on the other side for, say, a tattoo artist as yourself, seeing like Dave Navarro, talk about? I'm like,
the one that has shitty tattoos.
Yeah, everywhere, and the crazy haircut. Yeah.
And that's all I'll say about that, because I'm like, oh, that's so judgy, and I don't want to judge.
But I mean, if anything, you have the chops to say like I mean, I would imagine, because you are a tattoo artist. I mean, if anything, it'd be different for me, because I mean, I don't even have a tattoo, so no tattoos.
What?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm looking at you, lady, for my first tattoo.
I love that. I used to keep a little score of how many tattoo virgins or that I tattooed. And I love it. I love first tattoos. But okay, so there was plenty of debates about that topic, like in the tattoo shop that I was in, or amongst other tattooers. But I don't like them. Just because I think it kind of puts like a different perspective or expectation on the client's side, and they think like, oh, that's how it is, or that's how they talk, or and that's every tattoo artist, or that's going to be their experience across the board, and it's just not. So and I think that puts like a different stress on like the artists, that like, sure, there's some that are really good and they can handle it, but like the ones that are not that great, and then they do the art, and then it's like you're blasted on, it's just that stresses me out. So I'm like, oh, I just can't watch that. Like, it's just too much. But yeah, I never really got into it, to be honest.
That's badass, cause like, I mean, I know I've talked to a few artists and they're like, yeah, it's cool, it's on TV, it's now on, it's now out in the open and stuff, and it's just like at the same time I'm like, cause I don't know much about like the tattoos and stuff, but there are a few tattoo artists you would say that you're like, dude, I don't know how you got this far that you've seen. I mean, you don't have to name them by name,
Right.
yeah.
I guess, okay, so I think a lot of old school tattooers basically have a different feeling about like the new school tattooers, and it has to do with like an upgrade of equipment and different styles that may not hold up well as a tattoo in the long run. And so there's a lot of debate from that. So I think because shows like that also made it look easy, I think that there's a lot of other people that like just jump in, right? Or even like places like Amazon or eBay that they sell these tattoo kits, and they're like, oh, I could just buy this for $50 and it comes with everything. And it's like shitty ink, shitty, everything. But they start doing it at home, or, and it's like, that's where I do agree that there is a certain level of mentorship that you should do no matter what, right? But I think that I don't know, it's so hard. Like there have been a few that I see online on like my Facebook, right? And I've seen them like, oh, I'm starting to tattoo now, and like they just post like shitty work, and like it seems like they just skipped a lot of like the first steps that you should when you're doing this job. And it sucks because like I want to reach out and I want to say something, but I also don't want to like seem like a bitch, Can I say that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So and then also because I feel like, well, I'm not the best tattoo artist, like there's also a difference between like a tattoo artist and a tattooist, and I think I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, because I can't just like draw up anything and just like, oh yeah, I want to tattoo this today. I'm like, oh, I need like, oh, this is, oh, your first tattoo. Like, I like the story, I like the experience, I like the whole, my creative process with it. It's part of my experience too, So I'm like, oh, like I'm getting enjoyment and fulfillment from creating that design that you have in mind, So it's just different. It's different with, across the board. Everybody has an opinion about it. I try to keep my opinion to myself because I've gotten in some like heated discussions, and it's like, oh God, sometimes you're dealing with people that you look up to, right? Like, and you don't want to piss them off because you don't want them to think of you like that, or have any like negative feeling towards you. Mm-hmm. So it's just it's hard, you got to find that like fine line to walk every time, with these conversations, and like, I'm sure that that's how it is in a lot of these industries, So even with the burlesque, I'm like, okay, did I say something like, like, yeah, okay, but it is what it is, right?
Absolutely. And it's just what I was gonna ask too was that do you feel like tattoo artists should stick to one thing, or do you feel a tattoo artist should have their hands in different kinds of forms of like portraits, Japanese art? What's your opinion, being that, I mean, what, like, do you feel do you bite off more than you can chew when you get into different styles of tattoo, or do you feel like sticking to one is the safest thing to do if you're going to get into the industry?
So It really depends, because there's different ways to answer that, right? Like, if there's a street shop, which basically, like, there's more walk-ins, right? Then you kind of run into that space where you want to be able to take on anything that walks in, right? Because that's how you're gonna do your job, right? So it would be great to be well versed in all of these different styles, or to be a good business person, right? Because you're selling a service, and to say like, oh, that is not something I could do, but this is what I do. This is how I would do it. And if you want to come with me, this is what I charge. So it's just it's so hard to answer that, because then there's like the custom shops that they feel the same way, but sometimes it's easier for someone to specialize in one form or one style. And that way, when someone's looking for that style, they know who to go to, right? So, so for example, with portraits, right? In my opinion, they're very hard to do. A portrait artist, sometimes the way that they explain it, they're like, oh, it's easy. And I'm like, oh my God, well, that's why you're good at that, right? And that's why I feel like people should go to someone that's good at portraits, because that eliminates a lot of like stress on the artist, time on, for them to do it, damage the skin because then they're taking too long, or whatever. So I that's where my brain goes, where I'm like, to me, I think it's easier for someone to specialize, but you don't know that until you go through that process through an actual apprenticeship. And if you have a good mentor that they're like, hey, I want you to be able to learn as many of these styles as possible, and then you could decide, if you're good at one more than the other, then that's kind of where you're gonna go. But I've seen other tattoo artists that they like a different style, but they're good at, let's say they're good at 3, but they're more known for just one out of those 3, and they get more clients that come to them for that. So that happens, and they're like, man, I wish I could do more of that, but they don't get a lot of people that go to them because their portfolio shows more of that one style. So it just, I think that's why for everything that I posted, it was like, okay, look, I could do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I like doing this. And so I tried to keep it with that flow. And that way I could get more clients that see that work and they're like, oh yeah, I want a tattoo that looks like that. And, and a lot of it is just, that detail, fine line stuff that I like, and
absolutely.
I'm like, if I could do that all day, every day, and not have to stress about the other parts of other styles that make me stress, okay, then that's better for my client, better for me, win-win. So
absolutely,
that's just how I look at it.
Yeah, I would mean, if anything, if I was in your shoes, I would say the same thing too. It's just like, and that, and then also I would say also that, if I was starting off, I would just start off with one style and then take it from there. Because usually I'm like, I got one track mind, so it's like, I would hate to like do something like, I can only imagine if I try to do like a portrait or something, I would probably more than likely fail compared to like something tribal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Interview's going really, really well, and if anything, just give you a few more questions. I don't want you to be like, dude, like, what's
it's okay.
it's going so fluid, and with the flow, just if anything, just a few more questions, but so like, okay, so I'm gonna throw a name out, so like Kat Von D, like the or like being that they did like artists like her that they dive into like TV and stuff. Do you do you like when like Ed Hardy or like Kat Von D like that how that bleeds into like clothing and stuff like that? Do you feel like oh cool it's like it's like one of us, and then they're getting into like clothing where it's out in the masses, or do you feel it's like no dude just stick to your craft and what's your take on that?
So I laugh because that very question does come up amongst tattoo artists, right? And some people feel very passionate to say like, oh, she sold out or, whatever. But it's like, if
Exactly.
anyone was in that position, I think from a business perspective, why not make the most of it, right? And look at her. She's sitting pretty. She doesn't care about your opinion. It doesn't matter. And she does great work. Like, from what I've seen, I don't have a full-on opinion because I don't follow her like that. I've seen a few things, and but I think it breaks down to there's that ugly side of that social media, and that's what I fear. It's like everybody has an opinion, and I think if I was in her position, man, I would have made the most of it, and oh well, if they only want to come to me because they think, about my image on the outside, and, so be it. I've had people come and get tattooed by me, just, a couple guys like just trying to hit on me, and I'm like, all right. Like,
oh man, really?
Yeah, and it gets real awkward when they ask you for your number and you're like, oh no, I'm sorry, like I'm not into that.
Gotcha.
Like, and so, but even like my son's father, like he came to get tattooed, and like I didn't think that.
And he hit on me.
And, no,
I'm just kidding.
And that, that's really what happened, but I didn't see that coming, and it's.
Oh, so yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm like, you got me baffled over here, lady. So I'm like, yeah, because like I imagine you're just like doing a tattoo and just like mind your own business, and then like a guy comes in. I'm thinking you're thinking, yeah, just a tattoo on a person, and then yeah, what is that like? Is that okay? So I'm glad you hit that point. So do you feel that it's always going to be a boys club, or do you feel that through time it's become it's going to become more of like it's a girl thing?
Equal,
and yeah, or but like yeah, or now that you're saying that about being hit on, it's like that's I guess I don't know, I guess it's male dominated. Do you feel, or is it?
I think that there's still that element. I think that there's still like the stigma of male tattoo artists hitting on their clients and being, a little too sexual sometimes and not professional. But, and I'm not saying that I personally witnessed that, but I'm just saying like industry wide, right? But I think that things have changed, at least in the past 6-7 years that I've been aware of this industry. But like I said, like even when I was 21, going into tattoo shops and asking about like, what's the process, man, it was so difficult, because then you have some guy like, oh, first tattoo, oh, let me guess, and it's just like, what? And so it's those experiences that happen to me that I think about, and I'm like, oh, I would never want to treat someone else like that, because you don't know how they're feeling, what they're wanting, like what they're going through, and like why sometimes they want this tattoo to have this special meaning and this special experience, and you could kill that all with just like one attitude, basically. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. As far as like the clientele and how that kind of happens, like Well, I think I learned from a lot of those earlier situations where I'm like, oh, like I know what not to say, or
Pick up on certain things.
like, oh, I can't be too friendly with this person because they might take
it a different way.
Right. So, that was just one thing I had to kind of go through and like just experience. But I think that there was a little bit of like pushback when I first started posting about me apprenticing to be a tattoo artist, and I remember a few people reached out and they're like, oh, so you just think you're pretty that you're going to be a tattoo artist and like get your weight kind of thing? I'm like, what? No, like I'm working for this, like I'm learning, like. So I remember one tattoo artist just having giving me a hard time and just making me struggle because that's what he went through, and so kind of like hazing, or like giving a apprentice a hard time, and because he had to go through that. And I remember when I had already, established my position and like out of my apprenticeship, and when a new apprentice came and I was like, I'm not going to treat you like that, because I know what that feels like, and I know like that's an unnecessary struggle, like that has nothing to do with this job. And so when we were talking about like in the beginning of like finding one style or trying to focus on, like, I think that when you go through that apprenticeship and when you're in a shop and you get to see like that, the rotating like clientele, the different ways that you have to, manage these situations, you get more exposure, and then you know how to handle it yourself, and like as you start your process of learning how to tattoo, like you're not only learning about the machines and the equipment, but then you're learning like the basics, basics of just like pulling a line, and some of those are so important for the majority of tattoos is just line work. I'm not really talking about portraits again, but
yeah.
So and that's where to answer your question earlier about like, when I see other people and, like if I have an opinion about them, and it's like, that's what I look at. If I see like, oh, they just started and oh, they're killing it, they're going, but if they have shitty line work, then it's like, well, that the majority of that tattoo just doesn't look good, and so that's what I base stuff off of. But again, I'm like, man, there's way more tattoo artists out there that are way more experienced that, can handle more, and I think would have a better opinion on that than I do.
Gotcha. I mean, if anything, I do appreciate what you're saying, because like, it's just like not many people know what happens like in a tattoo shop and tattooing in general.
Yeah.
And it's just everybody's like, well, it's just a few lines, and you put a needle on somebody.
Yes.
Or something like that. So any plans for the holidays? Are you a holiday? Are you a Christmas song person, or you just no?
Like Mariah Carey songs?
Stuff like that,
No.
or Jingle Bells, or
no.
no?
I mean, I love. I don't know. Whenever I think of myself, right, I think like I'm a good in the middle type person. Like I'm not too crazy about things, and I'm not too like F this, I'm like,
yeah.
I like to decorate, but not go overboard.
Gotcha.
And so I like it. I like some parts of it, and just I'm a giver, so like I love trying to create gifts because I feel like that's more true to like the Christmas spirit, right? But then like I don't know, it's just me. It's a personal thing. Like I always wait till the last minute and do things, and I'm like a perfectionist, like I said. So then I'm like, oh no, this doesn't look right. But I'm not going too crazy this year, so just gonna relax at home.
Gotcha. And do you so you don't dive into like the holiday movies? Any one in particular that you like?
Um, I am guilty for watching Elf quite a
I
bit.
love Elf.
I
Yeah.
love it. I just love it.
I don't think anybody doesn't like Elf. It's just like
There's a lot of people that don't.
really.
Yes. So I have a tattoo of Jim Morrison on my leg,
Oh,
right?
badass.
Love Jim Morrison.
Uh huh.
But some people think that that's Will Ferrell. And I'm like, what? Okay, like I said, I'm ditzy sometimes and I get things wrong and I say names wrong. So I'm like, no, like, did you really say Will Ferrell? And, it's the hair that's kind of like, crazy. But I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't see it. But anyways, so I love Elf. I'll watch that. But then I always get into like that mode, like the day before, like Christmas Eve, where I'm like feeling really nostalgic, and I'm like, what am I gonna plan? Like, I think I gear up to like find those old school animation Christmas stories of like the. I have to think of the name. But I'll try to find like those vintage ones, and like every now and then I'll find them, and so if I can find it, then that's what I love to watch on Christmas Eve, and just like that does it for me.
And so I imagine it does change now that you've had a child, a kid. Christmas is like you have to come to it a lot more different, or do you feel it's like it's gonna be the same, or what do you? Or I mean, imagine it makes it like a lot more happier. You're like, oh, I got my little bundle of joy now. I can like take them to the lights and stuff.
You know what? This year will be better. Last year, I think I was like going through the realization of like the breakup with his father, and like that we weren't really breaking up, but it like the relationship was already like proving to be done. And so I think that I always wanted that like Pinterest perfect image of like father and son wearing like the same pajamas, and or like family wearing like stupid shit like that. But that didn't happen, and so I think I went through like a little bit of like a depression, and so this year I'm like, oh well, it doesn't have to be like that perfect family photo, like, but I know what I'm doing for my son, and the traditions that I want to create with him. I feel like I have a better idea of what they're gonna look like now and as he gets older, and so this year is gonna be better.
Nice. I could already see it in your voice, and it is gonna be nice.
Yeah.
But what was I gonna ask? What else was I gonna ask? What? Well, next time I mean, if you ever decide to come back on, I will bring a board game, maybe Risk, while we're. Just kidding.
I'm like,
no.
Oh man, you don't want to.
Oh, you're.
I'm not good. That's the multitasking that I'll be
Oh,
like,
Risk.
Man, yes.
Right.
What did you ask me again?
I was watching this comedian. I don't know if you heard of Eddie Izzard. No, it's this guy. He dresses as in drag, and he does it. He's British, and he was saying he goes, yeah. What was he saying? He said something about that. Okay, so like the end of the World War II, he goes that Hitler that he lost Germany. He's like, I guess Hitler never played Risk, because that's the first country you lose when you're playing Risk.
Oh my god!
But it just so it just kind of like I was thinking about like also like incorporating maybe a board game as I'm doing the interview, but I'm like kind of like iffy about it now.
Dang.
Or maybe like I don't know, like something fun. But I mean, if anything, I had fun just talking. I mean, it'd be kind of hard talking and then playing like whatever we're playing or something.
I don't know.
Pictionary.
I mean, it might work. Like, so I'm sure you've seen the.
Are you a board game gal?
No.
No.
I mean, I guess, but I'm trying to think of. I think the last game I played was like Candyland.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, oh my god, I think this was last month, and it was at my friend's, and we were playing with her nieces or her niece, and I was like, man, okay, this is fun. And as soon as I was getting into it and I was about to win, like her niece got all upset, and I was like, oh man, like,
here it goes.
What do you do? Like, oh no, I didn't win, but I'm like, I won.
Yeah,
I know I won.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I took it seriously.
Yeah, I'm like,
oh man.
So I don't know. My son's gonna have to learn. Like, you didn't win. You better get over it.
Yeah, this is real.
Yeah, this is real life.
Right, and then actually like buying the board game life. Like life is hard, okay?
Yeah. Like there ain't no do over.
Well, Gladys, thank you very much for coming on the show. I'm gonna master it and remix it, and I'll send you a link if you want to post it on your Instagram. See if just get people to listen that you were on our show. But did you have fun?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Make sure I don't sound dumb.
No, absolutely not. I was like, when you told me that, I was like, you look like, I look like I'm the one that would be dumb with it, because you have like so much like the tattoo, the burlesque, and so I was like, and then I had written down questions, and I was like, it's gonna look very scripted, because like, and then you're like, no, like, you kind of gave that impression, like, have questions for when I come down.
Like, well, I think because I didn't know what to expect.
Okay.
And,
so what did you expect? Or that you expected the unexpected, or did you like?
Yeah, I talked to my friend right before I came, and I was like, yeah, I'm doing this podcast, and they were asking me like, oh, if I had checked you out, and I was like, yeah, I checked them out, and I was like, I just don't know what I'm gonna add to this, like,
Yeah.
And because I've always had like friends that are like, oh, you should do a podcast, and it would be so funny, and like, but I'm like, I'm not really that funny. Like, I think sometimes that's like just real, or you can make fun of me or laugh at me, but
you should definitely do a podcast.
I don't know.
You and somebody else.
I thought about it, but I don't know. I think that, and the reason why I was like, oh my god, why are you picking me? Like, I feel like I'm so far removed from everything, like, I have that life experience, like, I did it, I know I did it, but I feel like, oh my god, like, my little blinders have been on of, like, I've just been in mommy mode, and,
Gotcha.
And like I said, like, I'm barely kind of, feeling comfortable, and like, okay, now is the time that I can venture out, and I could still be a person, and not fall under just that title. So
see, I don't get that. I don't get that impression from you. If anything, I get kind of like that, like, when I like your page and stuff, I got like a powerhouse. So yeah, just, I mean, if anything, just dive into it back again. I mean,
gotta fake it.
not necessarily, but I'm like with the tattoo and the burlesque, I'm like, you seem like the type of person, like, let's jump off this cliff, and then, oh, there she goes, and you know what I mean? Like, it's
probably because I fell on accident, and just like
there was a banana,
off a highway,
right? There was a banana peel.
Yes, that happens.
Oh man!
But I always land on my knees.
Absolutely. And so, like, one more thing, is there a memorable tattoo story you want to say, like something that?
See, that's what I was like, okay.
Because you had in my bad. Yeah, absolutely. So you looked at it and didn't forget. So you think that I didn't forget? Yeah.
No. Yeah. Okay, so I have a good one.
Okay, cool.
So
I'm all ears.
Like I said, I used to post, or I used to keep a tally of like tattooed virgins, right? And one time I got a client that came in just for a Friday the 13th, something simple, and he's tattooed all over, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, And he's talking like he goes to different tattoo artists and travels, gets tattoos, and so I was like, okay, we got to talking, and so he's like, yeah, thinking about getting some different tattoos. Like, how comfortable are you about doing like intimate tattoos? And it's been a long time that this actual conversation happened, but basically, we talked about like how explicit can I?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Let the chips fall where they may. Uh-huh.
So he wanted his butthole tattoo. Right?
Oh man.
And so I was like, oh my god, like in the shop we had talked about doing intimate tattoos, and I had seen as a helper, apprentice, whatever, like a tattoo on like the lips of a vagina, but I've never done one. So I was like, hey, well, hell yeah, I'll do it. And so basically, we did the tattoo, and he wanted the Super Mario Brothers. That, oh my god, what is it? The little
the green
plant?
one? Oh, the plant, yeah.
What is it? Is it a plant?
The fly eater.
Yeah, a Venus flytrap.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's an actual term for it, and I'm not thinking about it, or the name of it. But okay, so we did that one, right? And man, like that was so difficult and interesting. So we had to do that like in 3 different steps, right? Like we did the line work, came back, we did the color, and I think that we didn't finish that one, so we had to come back to get it finished, right? And mainly because I was like, oh my god, like, we're learning together, basically. Like, there's tattoos everywhere.
Yeah.
But, so it went from that to, I tattooed several tattoos on him that just, kind of built up this, like, friendship, right? So I've done butthole, I've done penis, I've done his balls. So on one side, it's actually a picture, or it's from one of my Instagram pictures, and it's my lips with like a cherry. And so when he had told me, he was like, oh yeah, I want this, like, I wanted lips, I wanted something different, and like it's actually like a picture of yours, like, is that okay? And I was like, what? Like, okay, and I was like, what's happening, And but again, like it was just like this great friendship that we had created, and so he was even getting like tattoos on his butt, and I've had this like running joke with someone at some point to be the first one to tattoo our name on their butt, right? And so it was kind of like a bet, kind of a race, kind of whatever. Uh-huh. So whenever someone would be like, oh, well, what do you see here? What would you think? Or, I think it was just a name at that point, like just someone to get my name on them. And, well, long story short, he was like, yeah, I'll do that. Like, I'll help you with the bet. So I was able to tattoo Gladys on his butt, but then also he was like, oh, let's make it fun, do property of, right? So it says property of Gladys. And then, so I did quite a few on his penis, because he also wanted like a dick sleeve. Like he wants to be like tattooed fully.
From head to toe.
From head to toe. So yeah, that was very interesting that I started with a butthole. But and now they have transitioned, and now he is a she, and so I've been able to tattoo her, and so it's funny because sometimes I'm like, oh, like, is it okay? Like, and they're very open. They're like, oh yeah, you can say, you talk about it. And so that's the story. Like, it used to be so funny because I would post updates of like, oh, well, now I did a butthole, and then now I did a penis, and then like, just telling. Oh, and I did pasties on his nipples, or her nipples, whatever. You know what I mean? I get confused, but so yeah, that's probably like the best story that people ask about. Like, have you ever done this or that? And I'm like, oh, I have one client that I did all of that.
Yeah.
On, so.
Let me tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. So It was a wild journey, but that kind of opened the door for other people to see that I've done those tattoos, and that I've had other people coming in.
Would you say it's a wild journey to the center?
Yes. And I'll tell you what, like, man, you know when people get nervous, like, just even getting a tattoo anywhere, like your body reacts, and so yeah, it was tough. It was.
Imagine it was very tough.
Different.
Yeah.
But I even
I imagine it got a little hairy too. Huh?
Well,
no, I'm just kidding.
We had to shave. So.
I'm trying to go with the double entendre joking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it. It takes me a while, but I'll get it.
I got you. But yeah, you were saying, sorry before I interrupted my.
You're fine.
I'm good.
I probably lost that train of thought.
Got you. Yeah, I mean, thanks for coming on. Hopefully you have a good holidays. Nothing too bizarre or hairy. And
no,
hopefully
not
normal this year.
No, I was like gonna say no Santa Claus, but I actually tattooed a Santa Claus, and like he dressed up as a Santa every year, and he had me do 2 chest tattoos, and it was like naughty and nice, and I forget what else was a part of it, but I had to shave him, and I was like this inch thick of hair. And
Robin Williams.
Oh, yes.
Really?
Yes. So it was I tattooed Santa. So
yeah.
Cheers to that.
Well, thanks a lot, Gladys. Thanks for coming on. If you need anything, let us know. If anything, I would love to have you back on sometime. If you want to like bring somebody on, like where it's like a double team of like tattoo artists, or even you decide to do when you decide, I'm gonna say, your burlesque show, I'd be more than happy to go see you.
Oh, thank you.
Give you vote of confidence, and get you cheer on.
I appreciate that.
But I appreciate you coming down all the way down here too.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
Appreciate it. Thank you.